Right. So today we are going to discuss about RESTful API in context to AWS when we are working on. So as we all know, whenever we are working on Amazon Web Services, which is one of the prominent cloud service provider, there are different services we can use. Either it can be for application integration or it can be security of the applications, all that. Equally, we must be knowing about how application communication must be taken place. So how applications and all everything we want to communicate is what something which we need to learn. In this regard, whenever there is an API which we have to create, which is called application programming interface. So when we are creating any kind of APIs in cloud service provider of AWS, different APIs can be used. Either it can be SOAP API or it can be RESTful API. HTTP API, right? So there are different APIs we have. So one of the prominent API in context to the gateway when we wants to create to communicate between two applications is called REST API. So here, this is how generally this creation of REST API will be. So when we want to create any kind of REST API for this AWS application. So where we have four different options. One, if you want to create a new API and all everything, so that can be created. Or else if you wants to clone an existing API. For example, if you want to create a new API, wherein we have to provide API name and where generally this API endpoint type will be connected with. Either is it a regional connectivity of API we are developing, or else is it something relating to the private or something of that sort we have to create, and we need to create an API accordingly. This is for new API creation is what something we have to do. So make sure we have to provide the name for a particular API. Next is clone existing API. Clone existing API means assume that there is an existing API which was already created. Because to communicate applications, there are multiple APIs can be created, right? Assume that there is no necessity all the time in the real world we create new APIs. Apart from that, even we have a provision where we can connect and clone existing APIs also. Hence, clone existing APIs is also one of the key and important element we have to be focused more on. Next, we need to import API. For example, if you want to create any kind of API which can be imported, we have to choose the whatever the file is required and all. So that file can be selected. And we can import API from external sources because external sources will be there. So where we have to extract from the external sources, wherein we need to choose an option, either whatever the warnings are we going to get, right? So is it a fail warning or is it something like ignore warnings as what? Something which we have to be done, created with, right? This is where generally import API come into picture. So once import API, the next is example API, wherein if you want to have any kind of example for any kind of API and all that. So this is how generally an API is. So wherein we need to provide the description for an API where the first API for Amazon API gateway is what something which we have created here. So this is how generally this API creations and all everything is what something which we have to be identified. Either creation of API in context to the API example what we have taken for Swagger 2.0 or creation of new APIs or closing an existing API or import APIs or something, which and how is what something which normally we have to do whenever we are working on the AWS. So this is all about the session. So if you have any queries, all that, so please reach out to the contact details, which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.